letting your kids have a voice. This allows our EL students, the majority of our students, to have a voice in what they're learning, and they're thinking about their thinking. And it's a letting go to the students to demonstrate what they know.
The other thing that has changed is that not only through thinking maps, but through everything that we've been doing and incorporating thinking maps, is that we're looking at standards, we're looking at rubrics, and then we're allowing students to choose how they're going to think about how to get to that point, to that standard, or to that, to that level or that rubric.
In a sense, it's a way of differentiation, because everybody writes from their own point of view to the same idea, the same way of looking at a text or looking at something that you're working on from different point of view. Some of the kids say, oh, that's an analogy. Some of the kids say, if we compare and contrast this, we can get to this conclusion. So they're analyzing the same thing from different point of view. And for me, that's differentiation, because every kid thinks in a different way.
It's more about student learning and how do we improve our teaching as teachers, and not so much about they're my students, how am I, someone's going to look at me that I'm not a good teacher. It's more about how do I get my students to the next point. For the teachers as well, I think that we have improved our craft because we've become better teachers of writing. I mean, definitely. I've become a better writer just because now I can use my flow map. And for many situations, I'll write it out so that I have it clear in my head so that it's not scrambled. So it's really clear what my message is. And I think that that's what we need to help our students. Well, it helped us to give a better message to our students, and therefore our students can give a better message back.
Have you seen a change in planning?
Oh, yeah.
Like lesson plans?
Yes, because now they really write down. Whereas before I was asking, write down what the process is. Now it's like it's so natural. They'll write it in there.
And so do you see pictures of maps? And
I remember when I was planning, I was like, okay, let's do this, this, and this, but I wasn't thinking about the thinking process. Now we're going to, okay, let's describe this first, then we're going to compare and contrast, and then, so I'm now focusing.
Yeah, I think what I saw is that we were so concerned about in the lesson planning, it was more about activities. I think what you're saying is that now it's not just activities, it's this is the goal, and now how am I going to get there?
You're saying you're walking the talk of using the same tools that you're asking the students to use.
Oh, and I do, and even for discipline, we use them as well. And the students, we always talk about what caused that behavior and what could be different.
And then on the back, they have to brainstorm with a circle map, how are they going to change it, or what kind of ways can they make it better? So before they even get to Aurora, the kids have thought about it.
I use it for personal situations as well, or professional. I write down what will happen first, what will happen next, my little flow map. And I'm also teaching it to myself. It was really interesting. I walked into a 4th grade class, and I told the student, I said, well, shouldn't you be using whatever kind of map, a circle map, let's say. And then he said, no, I think I should use a tree map because this is what I want to do. I was like, okay, you're right.
When I walk into a classroom and we can ask kids, what are you doing right now? If they say, well, I am going to compare and contrast, you're like, wow. They're really digging deep, and they have the language to tell me what they're doing, and it's an amazing thing.
In Mr. Gomez's class, the kids said, well, that's the double bubble is used for comparing and contrasting. And he said, well, those are big words, but what does that mean? And they were able to tell them.
We're going to compare and contrast teachers before thinking maps and teachers after thinking maps. How are they the same? And how are they different?
We started 3 years ago, right?
About 3 years.
About 3 years. And before then, walking into the classrooms, I wasn't really sure what their goals were. I wasn't sure if the teacher was just teaching and the student was learning.
So over here, you now know what the purpose of the lesson is and the goal of the lesson.
Because I can go to any student, just about any student who has been here, and ask them, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Why are you doing this map? The other thing that I think that goes along with that is collaboration. There, it's more of a willingness and openness When we were talking
Sorry.
about programs and staff development and budget, I think that a few years ago, I probably would, well, I never had that conversation because I knew that it wasn't going to be talking about, that we weren't going to be talking about student success, that we were going to be talking about personal success.
We wanted to do the right thing, but we didn't have the tools.
And I think we always wanted to success. Maybe we didn't know how, but we wanted.
Because it wouldn't have happened if there was not a want.
Yes, a desire. Desire to work together, to be collaborative.
And I think that the big success here was that we wanted to find how. There was a desperate, because we had tons of staff development,
We had tons of things.
tons of things, but it didn't quite work for us. It was a bunch of things that was helping a little bit, but it was thinking about was the big thing that really brought us together.
There'd been a lot of staff changeover, and in the last 6 years you've been here, nobody has left, really.
Yeah.
So do you think that the maps had anything to do with the stability, with the cohesiveness of
I
our
think so,
staff?
and I would think that as a teacher, that if I'm in a place where everybody knows where we're going, then I'm going to stay. We want our children to succeed. I mean, that's really, that's the bottom line. And in order to get there, we need the most trained teachers. Our focus with Thinking Maps has been in language arts and in writing. So
now we're
we
gonna-
know that we need
So our
to
focus needs
move
to
it
be
into the math.
cross-curricular, more maps in other
Yeah.
areas.
Because one of the things that we found out in the CSTs and in STAR testing is that a lot of the math, they have to read it. And so in order for them to really understand, and I know that's one of the things that you did in your class, is that when the students were reading the questions, the math questions, you really broke it down. And you talked about the vocabulary, and then you talked about the process and the steps. And I thought that was really key, because then they could really understand what they were being asked.
Because
We're